Welcome to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders podcast, brought to you by myself, Angela Davies, and my co-host, Dionne Watson.
As well as Ange and I, today we are joined by some very special guests. We have with us Alison Madgin and Carly Barrett from Samantha's Legacy. And Samantha's Legacy is a charity that's based here in the Northeast. And it was set up to raise awareness about a really important topic about knife crime. And it was set up after the murder of Alison's daughter and Carly's sister, Samantha Madgin. Welcome to you both, and thank you so much for coming to join us on this podcast today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes, hello, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm Alison.
And I'm Carly.
We do really appreciate you coming along. We think this raises awareness about a really important topic, and we imagine this isn't actually something that's very easy for you to discuss. So, like I say, we really appreciate you coming here. And what we were hoping to do today is to have a bit of a walk through your story, and if we can discuss what's happened with Samantha. So to get us started, we were hoping really, could you tell us a little bit about Samantha? So a bit of a background about her, what was she like, that sort of thing.
Samantha was a normal young girl. She loved dancing, singing. She danced from the age of 3, and more than anything, she loved her family. Just a normal girl growing up. Loved her holidays, loved to travel, whether we went camping or if we just went abroad. She loved it. She loved the sunshine. She loved being on the beach and at the pool. And we did have great family holidays. I have a lot of good memories of Samantha on holidays. Obviously, she gets to the teenage years, and the boundaries do try to get pushed a little bit. But I think it's just the transition they go through.
It's all teenagers, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. She loved her clothes. She loved looking nice. Like, for instance, if she was going out and she was going to a party one night, and 20 minutes later she's back, bursting the front door open, furious because somebody had the same dress on as her.
Oh, bless her.
I'm happy about that. But yeah, that's the type of girl she was. Always laughing, and when she walked in the room, you knew she was there. She did light up the room when she was there. She was, to me, she was a very pretty young girl. Loved being in her company. Probably same as a sister, was she?
Yeah, so Samantha was my big sister. There's 2 years more. She was a very protective sister. She, when we were younger, I laugh now, and she was kind of like my translator, because she would always be like, "Carly, are you okay?" And I'd be like, "No, Sam, I want a drink," if we're at a friend's house or something like that, or I want a packet of crisps or something. We're still, when we're in the teenage years, we still had, a few little arguments.
Yeah.
More so probably over makeup and straighteners.
Sibling
But
rivalry.
Yeah, absolutely. But she was a very loving sister, and like Mum said, growing up we made many happy memories, and Samantha just loved being with family. Would go to my grandma and granddad's house all the time, and Tuesdays and Thursdays was mince and dumpling days.
I love that.
We're just
Brilliant.
we're all still now. We're very close family, and she just loved being with family. She did.
She had very loyal friends as well. Like her friends, from school and stuff, and she always seemed to be like sorting their problems out, and they were always in my house, everyone discussing everything that had to go on. And I do miss all that. The sleepovers were like, you'd come in, you had to count the shoes at the front door to see who was sleeping.
So you always had a house full.
Oh, it's all right. My mum won't mind. So I say, who have you brought now? Oh, not speaking to her mum or something like that. But no, I've got great memories of that. And she was the child as well who I would say was the tidiest. You know,
Really? Oh, what do you say about that, Carly? Carly's like,
I've
what?
seen
I
Carly's face
actually agree.
Do you agree with that one?
I used to work shifts sometimes, so I wouldn't come in till like my shift wouldn't finish till 2 o'clock in the morning. So obviously, when they got older, Samantha was the mum of the house when I was out on my shifts. She would be doing your tea, wouldn't she? Like the tuna pasta. I don't think a tuna pasta, that's all she makes, but you know, and she would get them to do the dishes. Actually, Lee, she wouldn't even get Lee to do the dishes.
So Lee was the oldest out of the three. I was the youngest, and Samantha, the middle child.
She was very vocal. That's something on her mind. She would have to say it.
Sometimes got her into trouble, especially at school.
Yeah.
Did.
We always told them to be honest, and she'll say, "Well, you told us to be honest." So yeah, there's a time and a place, you know.
It used to backfire on you. She was brutally honest.
But she was well liked, and our teachers loved her, and she done well in her GCSEs. When she left school, she went to college. She was 16. But they always had to work. They worked for their dad. He had businesses, so they always had to work for pocket money. They didn't just get it willy-nilly. And then she left school with her GCSEs, and she wanted to do her business studies. And she was working at her dad's, still earning money. She loved to have her own money. She would never spend it. She always had money. She would spend everybody else's, but not her own. She loved her clothes, loved looking nice, always in the mirror, doing herself up, always smiling and laughing. And then when she got to 18, obviously she became pregnant with Callum, which was a real shock.
Was it a shock for everyone?
Yeah, not so much that, you know, she was pregnant. It was actually Samantha pregnant, because she was very, you know, all at that stage, me, want to do a lot of things and loved her clothes, her music, everything. I was thinking, I just couldn't imagine her with a child.
Yeah.
But she was the total opposite. She was amazing all the way through it. I mean, once we got over the shock and the pregnancy started to flow, she was amazing. She was really looking forward to it.
She was always like, our memory of Samantha with me, she was always mature. Like, no one ever thought that she was actually the age she was. She was just always acted older. She always looked older. And even now, like when I look back and think, you know, she was 18 when she was pregnant. At the time, I thought that was like a really old, mature age. But then obviously now I know at 18, you know, many people have babies at 18, but she flourished through her pregnancy. And, you know, the first 10 weeks she had with Callum, she was just an amazing mother.
Oh, she never put him down. She would carry him about everywhere. Obviously, she still lived at home, so we've seen all that, and it was lovely to see. And I always remember when she come running in the kitchen, said, "He's just smiled at us, Mum. He's just smiled at us." Oh. I mean, she would even take him to the bathroom with her, and I'd be like, "Where's the bit? Where's he got?" Yeah, with me. But she adored him. Absolutely adored him.
Really lovely memories.
Yeah,
to have. But it's really sad for Callum losing his mum as well. It's really sad for all of you, but
unfortunately,
Callum
he never got to know her, really. He was only 10 weeks old.
So young, isn't it?
So young, which is the saddest. That's what I find very, very hard. How much is missed out.
Yeah.
And how much, because he's a wonderful young man. I mean, he's 18 this month. And he's just a wonderful young man.
And does he remind you a lot of her? Can you see Samantha in him a lot?
Oh, yeah. And he's definitely, he is quite vocal as well, isn't he?
Oh, yes. Yeah. He also tells you how it is.
Oh, yeah. He tells you how it is, yeah. But he's always right, though. But no, we're very proud of him. But at the same time, again, it's just all so sad. He'll be 18 this month, and that's the same age as his mum was when she was killed. So it's going to be a hard one.
It's going to be really hard. It
will.
is so
Yeah.
tragic. 18 is no age, is it?
No.
No.
She sounds
And
like
then
she was a lovely young woman, just full of
She does.
joy and full of life, and so much ahead of her.
Yeah, she wanted to live life. She wanted to do all sorts. And she would have, Samantha, if she had something on her mind, she would be and wanted to do it, she would do it.
I think that's where we get a lot of determination and, you know, the passion to make change. We both always say we can kind of hear Samantha sort of saying, you know, you need to do this, you need to do that. And, you know, sometimes I lie in bed at night and it's like as if an idea or something's just come to my head, and I think, where did that come from? And then I think, Samantha.
Samantha.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we speak in the schools and that, I always can feel her saying, Mum, you better tell them, you know, it has to stop. I always feel about, people say they're at peace, but I always feel like Samantha's quite angry up there.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that kind of leads us on to the next part of Samantha's story. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about what happened to Samantha, if we could maybe think about events that led up to it, where she'd been that day, and then what actually happened.
So that day, on the 2nd of August, it was, I remember I was walking home, and I had texted her and I'd said, would you like us to look after Callum and you can go out for a few hours? And she was like, no, it's fine. But I knew our friends were going out. So I said, Samantha, you know, get yourself a way out. I'll watch Callum. But she was very like, are you sure you know what you're doing? Like, you know, the bottles. And I thought, yes, Samantha, of course I do, you know. So yeah, I offered to babysit. And then I think she even met up with you that night, didn't she? And
yeah, well, her friends, a couple of them had just gotten their cars, passed their test. So she said that Stephen could pick her up, her friend, as long as he took her to Asda first to get a uniform, because she wanted to get back to work. She hated not having any money.
Did she?
Yeah, she was very, very independent for a young woman. She was very independent.
Sounds like she was older than he is.
Definitely.
Yeah. Stephen picked her up. They went to Asda, and then you said for them to go out, didn't you? She made the bottles up, and then she went down the coast. It was a lovely hot summer's day, just like messing around, kicking the ball about, blasting the music. And I was in town at work that night, and I said, where are you? I said, could you pick me up? And she said, yeah, we'll pick you up, because they were just driving around. So they picked me up and then dropped me off. I went for a few drinks with my friend. And then we're just driving about that night still. And then they decided to go and visit a friend in Wallsend. And like I say, it was a red hot summer's night. So he lived in a flat, you know, with the upstairs. So the stairs back in the back lane. And they were all just sitting on the steps. Samantha and her friends and James, who they had went to knock on, and they just sat outside chatting. There was a guy who had lost his cat, so Samantha helped him look for his cat. They got the cat in, and then they decided they were going to go home. But as they were chatting, 4 people went past, and one of Samantha's friends made a remark like, "Oh, look at him, the way he walks, you know, he thinks he's hard," something like that. Anyway, these 4 people went into a flat nearby, and then they were going home, saying goodnight to James, because I think James actually went in the house, and then the two of the males that had went past earlier came out with a knife each and started to chase 2 of Samantha's male friends, like round the car, you know, like trying to stab them. Samantha was, you know, she was halfway down the lane and shouting for them to stop. You know, she didn't want any trouble. She was heard shouting, "I just want to get home, but we don't want any trouble." And a 15-year-old girl who had been with them and went in the flat decided to take the out of the kitchen knife box, and she ran down the lane and attacked Samantha. It was a very, very vicious attack on Samantha. She suffered 43 knife wounds in the attack.
Wow, 43 knife wounds.
Yeah, 10 of them were deep stab wounds, and the fatal one was obviously through the heart, and she died at the scene. And that was the last time I seen Samantha.
Wow.
That is.
And I think for me, the worst thing was, what the hell was Samantha thinking about? And that was happening to her.
Yeah.
That must be really difficult.
More.
Because it's just the unknown for you, isn't it?
I mean, a lot of them know defense wounds and stuff, you know, in their hands. And then the killer went on the loose for 5 days. But, I mean, she hid the knife down the drain, the murderer. But eventually the police did catch her. I believe her mum actually took her to the police station and handed her in. I remember one of the main ones was she was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Because I believe the murderer was actually a stranger to Samantha, wasn't she? They didn't know each other.
No.
So it's such an unusual case in that one, stranger murders are quite rare, but then it was such a frenzied and brutal attack. And then to find out that the offender was a 15-year-old girl. A lot of crime, a lot of violent crime and knife crimes often associated with males and young males.
Yeah.
So it's such a unique case and so tragic.
I think as well, she wasn't in a gang or anything, or, you know, just basically, and I do believe she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I do believe if it hadn't been Samantha, it would have been somebody else.
Somebody else. But, you know, she's there that night with her friends, just doing what teenagers do, enjoying the sunshine, just got the licenses, having a day down the coast. And then her kindness in helping look for a cat, and then obviously seeing her friends getting attacked and trying to intervene and stop that. Showing kindness really until the last.
Yeah, there was no intervention. Samantha, all the witnesses, they heard Samantha shouting at the bottom of the lane, and this girl just came running out the flat and decided to attack Samantha. And she pleaded not guilty as well.
She pleaded not guilty.
Yeah, I mean,
that then leads to going to a full trial. Can we ask, after the incident, after Samantha had been attacked, how did you guys actually hear about it? What kind of unfolded after the incident?
Well, one of Samantha's friends who was there, it was like a maybe 10-minute walk, but he was probably here within 2 minutes. I was coming home in a taxi, and Lee, my son, was actually at the front door. So one of the lads had run up to the house to see Samantha had been attacked, and Lee already phoned his dad to say we had to go to the hospital. But as I was pulling up the taxi, Lee was shouting, Mom, stop that taxi. We need to get in it, we need to go to the hospital. Samantha's been stabbed. And I was like, what? I mean, I'd never ever heard of that. And I was like, she couldn't have been stabbed. And the taxi,
just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's a blur. No, I just always remember Lee putting his work boots on because he was in bed. I always remember him shouting to putting his work boots on and trying to get his balance coming down the path. And I always remember the taxi driver. He obviously must have heard stuff on the radio.
Okay.
And he said, are you going to the hospital? Yeah, there's been something happened. And I always remember I couldn't sort my money out or anything because I was getting in and he was like, don't worry about the money, just get yourself out. And when we got there was loads of police and stuff waiting for her. I mean, I knew it was bad, but I didn't expect her to be dead. I just thought I'd be going in asking her what had happened.
Yeah.
I suppose that's not the first thing that you go to, is it? Because it is so unbelievable and so shocking. and you
Yeah.
just don't. You don't think that happens. I think people don't think it happens, or that it would ever happen to you or somebody you know. It's not the first place you go to, is it?
No.
No.
When we got there, our dad was already in the room, and then there was me and Lee. I think that was it.
Yeah, so obviously at that point I was babysitting Callum. So Samantha had just got a flat about 5 days before. So I was at the flat. She'd actually come back at one point in the night, about tea time. And I always remember she walked in and Callum was crying. She was going, "Why is he crying? Why is he crying?" And then I says, "He's just waiting for his bottle. He's fine. His bottle's cooling down." And she was like, "Should I just stay, Collie? Should I just stay?" And I says, "No, Samantha." I says, "Go out." I says, "He's absolutely fine." And
Oh,
and I remember our last words were, "Collie, look after me son." That's what she said. And off she went and just said, "Don't worry, I've got a key. I'll sleep on the settee." And I was with my friend Sarah. She says, "You and Sarah get in the double bed." She says, "I'll sleep on the settee, don't worry." So we went to bed that night and we heard a knock on the door, and initially I said, "Oh, she hasn't got her key." And then
she's forgot a key.
yes, and I got up and I thought, but I opened the door and it was my dad's manager, one of his businesses at the door, and I was like, "Why are you here? What's the matter?" And he says, "Your dad's come to pick you up, Carly." He says, "Samantha's been in an accident." And I was thinking an accident, but he wouldn't tell us like what had happened. I don't think really he knew what had happened at that point.
Yeah.
So my dad came to pick me up with my brother Lee, and they were just silent, and they wouldn't tell us what had happened, and they just says, "Get in the car, Carly, we need to go to the hospital." And I remember sitting in the back of the car and I was thinking something really, really bad has happened, and then I remember thinking of Callum, and I was thinking, but she's a mother, like nothing, there's no way like she would have lost her life or anything like that. Um, and then I suppose we got, Lee and my dad still didn't say what happened, but then I got to the hospital and then that's when I see my mum, and then I knew that it was bad. I still, even to this day, I don't remember anyone actually telling us Samantha's gone. It was just as if I knew. It was, I remember all my mum wanted to do is see her and hold her.
Yeah.
But all they could sort of offer is seeing Samantha through a glass screen. And my mum was banging on the window trying to wake her up. But we weren't allowed to see her or touch her.
That must have been so difficult.
Yeah.
Did they explain to you why you couldn't? Like, were the police quite good with you in terms of explaining and throughout, or?
I remember they did stay with her.
Yeah.
We obviously had two liaison officers, Maureen and Simon, who were very, very good, and they just said because of the incident, like what had happened with forensic, we weren't allowed to see her. I remember one of the, obviously I was trying to wake her up. We did drive home. I think the police came. I don't know. I can't remember.
I think they met, because what we're doing is we went to Samantha's flat and we'll pick Callum up and then we'll come back to my mum's. And I think what my memory was is Simon and Maureen, our family liaison officers, they were just there all the time and they were just fantastic. And any questions were had, or they became part of the family. They did.
Yeah.
They would come in and they would just make a sandwich, or they would be making cups of teas, and eventually they knew all of the family who were coming round, and they were
very good. I think they were here almost every day.
Yeah, they were.
And they were like, obviously it was a big high profile case as well, and they were good at keeping like the press away, and like people we had the curtains shut for a long time, but they would go to the door and chase people away and stuff. They were so good.
That's really good. So I guess for us procedurally, we understand, as you know, we're ex-crime scene investigators, why that you wouldn't be allowed into that room. But for you guys, I can't even imagine how hard that must have been. And when you're in that kind of shock, the last thing that you're thinking about is that kind of part of the investigation. Or
I think what I hated was because she didn't, it had like something just covering her. I've only really seen her face, and I always remember thinking I didn't want people looking at her naked. They hadn't have her clothes on, and then when she had to have an autopsy and stuff, I couldn't grasp that there would be like doing things to her. Then she had to have 2 autopsies, I think, one for the prosecution, one for the defense, and I hated that.
I think as well, it felt like they took so long to release her body, as they say, and it was like we felt like we waited ages to have a funeral. It was 3 weeks. 21st of August, and she died on the 2nd. But I always remember thinking, why is this so long? And
I mean, then it was a long time. I mean, now I think it's normal.
Probably normal now, but then it was a long time. But then when I think back, you know, even when we went to court and everything, and what they had to do to gather all that evidence and make sure that, you know, somebody was held responsible for Samantha's murder, and in a way, it's kind of, we're thankful for that.
Yeah, I think that it's on reflection, it's, you can see that, but I think at the time, in the midst of it, it's everything's a blur, isn't it? And it's hard to understand what's going on and why things are taking so long. And I think that sometimes when you lose people, and then in really tragic circumstances, time kind of slows down.
Yeah, definitely. But like I say, Simon kept her up to date with everything, and I said to him, "Oh, I want honesty from you. I want you to tell us everything that's going on." And also Mick, who was in charge, they were very honest with us, and I was quite, you know, honest with them as well, like asking questions as well, which I think is good for us. But obviously some families would not be able to do that. I don't know where I went from at the time, but I was determined to find answers. But our team, I think they did make it easier. We did have a great team.
You're amazing, the family liaison officers. I think they do a great job. It's great to hear you had such a supportive team around you while you were going through that.
Like I say, they would come in, they were part of the family for nearly a year, coming in and doing all sorts, really. I remember Simon would be knocking me up, wouldn't he? And he'd be just coming in, putting the kettle and stuff on, and we'd all be upstairs getting ready and stuff, and they looked after us so well.
Once the murderer was arrested, do you know how long it took to get a charge?
I remember I know she was sentenced on the 7th of April the year after, wasn't it?
I think she was charged right when she was arrested. She got charged quite quick, I think. But like I say, they didn't find her for 5 days. 5 days to catch her, and they did arrest the wrong girl because unfortunately one of the witnesses gave a name. They only knew the first name, so they just went for a girl with the same name. But luckily, they realised they had the wrong one.
And then her mum brought her into custody.
I do believe her. I think, she brought her to the station.
How did you feel about that her mum took her in?
Well, I always remember we were up at court, maybe, I don't know, was it a week later? She was at the magistrates. And when she came in, I thought, my God, it's a young girl. I couldn't believe it. But no emotion, no tears, no nothing. It didn't show any emotion. And obviously it was going to the Crown Court, so she was remanded in custody. But then Mick always told us as well that he'd never interviewed anybody so cold. That,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
every answer was no comment. No, saying, you've killed a young mother, and no comment. And to this day, there's never been an ounce of remorse.
Was that harder for you to not see that she had any remorse?
All the way through the trial, she never showed an ounce of it, never shed a tear, nothing.
That is really
was-
cold, isn't it, for such a
This
young
was-
girl as well.
She even, when she was put up in the dock, the judge asked her, just because she tried to claim self-defense, put in not guilty plea, went through, so had to have a trial.
Wow.
And the judge said, can I ask you, did you lose any hair out your head? She was like, well, no. He says, did you have any wounds yourself? No. And apparently she said that she was high on cocaine and alcohol. And he said, well, how do you feel when you take cocaine? Now, that's always sticks in. She said, her reply was, oh, I feel happy.
I feel happy.
Wow.
Yeah. And even I think the judge actually shook his head, didn't he?
Mhm.
Yeah. If she knew Samantha, and she said, no, I've never seen the lass, or something like that, wasn't it? Just referred to Samantha as the lass.
The lass.
Mm-hmm. It is. I always thought I would get angry, but you've had so much taken from you. Like, it was hard to just breathe, never mind get angry.
Yeah.
Some people do get angry. My son was very, very angry. I could hear him breathe, and like 2 rows up from me, he just wanted to jump out of there, and I think he just wanted to attack her himself. He was so angry. It destroyed what all anger inside of him, and he was a young man, and he always felt that if he had been there, it wouldn't have happened. He had to protect his young sister. He always had the guilt.
There's often a lot of what ifs around things like this, isn't there?
Yeah.
That can sometimes drive you a bit crazy, because obviously you can't change any of the what
No.
ifs. Do you think, because obviously she pled guilty, if she'd have pled guilty, she would have just gone straight to sentencing, but rather she pled not guilty and it ended up going through a trial. How did you find that process? Would you have preferred it not to have happened? Would you prefer it to have just pled guilty and owned it and go straight to sentencing? Or did you get any kind of comfort going through that judicial process?
No, it's no comfort at all.
No.
I look at it as, that's just her again, not being remorseful for anything that she done, for taking Samantha's life, because, if it was a moment of madness, maybe, as, some people can say, she would have held her hands up and said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. I'm guilty. I'm 100% guilty. But she tried to say that she wasn't guilty, and it was self-defense, and it was heartbreaking. Some of the things that she was saying, like I think at one point she said that Samantha had attacked her with a vodka bottle or something, and but evidence showed that Samantha hadn't done anything like that, and being in that same room as her as well.
Yeah.
Like having to sit there knowing, she was literally meters away from her. I'm always told, like, well, like, we're not allowed to show any emotion. If we show any emotion, we'll have to leave the court. But one of the main things that really got to me was they were never allowed to mention that Samantha was a young mother, because you'd swayed the jury going towards that, like, sympathy votes type of thing.
But
So
it's just a fact.
It was never allowed to be mentioned.
Wow.
A big part of her life, being a mum.
We were worried about, having to share the dog with, like, her family and stuff, but not one person turned up for her. Not one person from her family. She only had a social worker.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, she didn't come from say, a family that I came from. You know,
Yeah.
she was taking drugs at 15. You know,
She was expelled.
she was
at 14.
expelled from school, drinking alcohol. Like
Boyfriend
was like
nearly 20.
4 or 5 years older than her.
He was a drug dealer apparently.
Yeah, but I think she tried to use the boyfriend as the excuse, the influence, and you know, he was the one feeding her cocaine, and she was very fixated on this cocaine being the reason of why she killed Samantha. But then, like Mum said about the judge said, well, how do you feel when you're on cocaine? And she said happy, and so it was like, well, you don't go and kill someone when you're happy.
She didn't just stab Samantha the once to say, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
It was a very,
Yeah.
and the whole knife went through Samantha.
Wow.
The force of it, I always remember that at court. The force that, you know, it was a blade. Can't remember the size, but
I remember
Wow.
as well that they'd mentioned about the boyfriend had picked Samantha in the hat. She had the shoe mark on her bum, and that would have been as she was actually getting attacked.
Wow.
It's so savage, isn't it? You can't imagine a human doing that to another human.
No.
So cold. And again, from a young teenager at the age of 15.
I know. That's never ever really sunk in, like why she would want to do that, why she done that. I can never, to be fair, I don't think about it now. It's one of them boxes you need to keep closed, because if you keep thinking about it, it'll just take you under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've always been determined that, because we had Callum as well to bring up, and obviously I had Lee and Lee at the time, and I thought, you know what it is, that murderer, she's killed Samantha, but she's not killing the rest of her off. And I know Samantha will be saying, like, don't let her do that, Mum. I always think she'll be so angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All determined to give Callum the best life we possibly could.
So you had Callum as a real focus there to look after, and
yeah, determined to give him the best that we could. Like,
so the murderer, she got found guilty. What was her sentence?
So she got sentenced to for 15 years. The maximum she could get because of her age. She got 15 years, which, you know, it doesn't bring Samantha back.
no.
At least it was some sort of justice for her.
Did it feel like a sense of justice?
a tiny bit, really.
Yeah,
Tiny bit.
a tiny bit. But then about a year after, she appealed against that, and my mum had to go to the High Courts down in London. Again,
wow.
she was going on the grounds of the boyfriend, the drugs, but that sentence then got reduced to 12 years. And then again, about a year later, she was allowed to appeal again, and that got reduced to 11 years.
So she was allowed to appeal twice, and it got reduced both times.
It got reduced
both times. You know, she was like sort of in and out of open prison towards the end of her sentence, and
she ended up serving 13 and a half years.
Yeah, so
because she was still getting in trouble when she was in prison.
That's got to have been difficult for you as a family, for her to get a reduction in sentence.
Absolutely,
definitely.
Yeah. It seemed like, you know,
that was the worst kick in the teeth.
Yeah,
getting the sentence reduced. And I was like, well, she's been given a sentence, leave it.
Let her serve the sentence.
Yeah. And as time went on, that's when I started noticing things that were happening to victims. Victims were getting abused by the system, getting left behind. To me, they weren't being thought of.
It was always like the perpetrators were sort of, you know, given more benefits and like things. Whereas, you know, she, for example, I always think that we were similar age. She would have went into prison. She sat all her GCSE. She's probably got, you know, few qualifications. And at the time, I had just sat my GCSEs, and I did really well in my GCSEs. And I went on to do my A levels. And with everything that was going on, it was, you know, more or less impossible. But then when I look back, I think, well, where was my support?
Yeah.
Why wasn't I being supported? Why wasn't our family being supported? What are we being offered here for the life that we're now living? Whereas it felt like she was allowed to just have anything she wanted, but within obviously the prison. I remember once when Facebook came about, for example, she ended up on Facebook, and you know they were doing a big thing to try get her off that, and you know, they
The
tried
police
to deny the fact that she had access to internet, but we had the evidence there that she did have the internet.
I remember Mick, who was in charge of the case, he was furious. He actually went to the prison. He was so furious
Did he?
to find out what had happened. Yeah, but even the sentencing itself is like, it's shocking.
It is.
Everything needs looked at.
I mean, today, when I see, you know, on the news that, and I'm not saying that, you know, these drug dealers don't deserve these sentences, because like we said, drugs are, you know, the source of most things, like with violence and stuff. But you know, when they're getting 13 and 14 years in prison, then I think, but somebody took my sister's life, and they got less than that. And it's like, so where, you know, within the justice system, you think, how are they making these sentences?
It doesn't add up, does it? And it often doesn't feel fair.
And I do feel for the police on that side of things, because they do a great job getting them to court, getting all the evidence. And some of them get like, they don't even get found guilty, they get like suspended sentences and stuff, and I can't work it out sometimes.
They're let down at the court. Well, we, you know, as a society, are let down at the courts, and you know, you see some people with certain crimes, and you think, how have they been let off of that?
I was going to say, I think we as crime scene investigators as well often felt let down by the judicial system, because like you said, the police do their part in the investigation, and we would do our part as scene investigators, and you put everything into it because you want justice. That's what you're hoping for. And often when things get to court, they get let down. I hope you don't mind me sharing this with you. I was assaulted a couple of years ago. Myself and my housemate, we got assaulted, and I was knocked unconscious, and my housemate had her arm broken, a big cut in her eye. She needed surgery. And we've been waiting for that to get to court for 2 years.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be going last November, so it was over 2 years after the incident. And I'll not say too much about it because it's still ongoing. It was supposed to be going to court, and the day before, I was chasing to find out when we were supposed to be giving evidence, and they basically told us that it'd become a floating case because they didn't have a courtroom or a judge. And at 5 o'clock the night before, they cancelled it. Then it took them 5 days to come back to us to let us know that it was going to be another 2 years, so not until October 2026.
Oh my God.
So we've got our MP involved to try and get it brought forward, and it got brought forward again to this month. And now the defence have just basically contacted and said, I can't do this month now, so we're going to push it back again. And
That's shocking.
That's just,
you know, as a victim of crime, you know, what your friend, for example, how she would have had to psych herself up to go and give the evidence. It's trauma, it's PTSD, isn't it? It's all that comes with it. It's not just a case of turning up in a courtroom. Like, that's, for them it is, it's their job. But as victims of any crime, it's a massive thing.
It really is. I think for me it's interesting because I'm now on the other side. So I've been a crime scene investigator and then being to court to give evidence. But now I'm going as a victim, and it feels very, very different. But also as a scene investigator, I was used to trials being pushed back and it being messed about. And I often would think of victims and victims' families. But I guess because I'm always on that other side of it, where we deal with people at the outset of the investigation, but not at the courtroom phase. And often things take so long to get to court. We've done God knows how many more crime scenes in that time. Like, you think about the impact, but not quite in the same way. Do you know, I don't think you fully understand it or get it. And now I'm on this side of it. It feels so very different. The whole judiciary, I think, is letting people down, letting victims down, letting families down.
It is. It has been for a long time, but like you say, until you're in it, you don't realise. Why would you be interested if you weren't a victim?
That's it. And I don't think people realise, do they? I think a lot of the time people go about their life and life's so busy. And until it happens to someone you know or to you, then it's more shocking and in your face. But I don't think people realise how much of this actually goes on.
No,
they don't. And so that's why we need to keep highlighting it. Like I say, we do the knife crime as well, but we do a lot for victims as well. Try to support as many victims as we can.
Well, of course, out of the tragic murder of Samantha, you've started Samantha's Legacy, which is just amazing to bring so much goodness and work so hard out of such tragic circumstances. We really honestly think you're so amazing and so inspiring.
we do.
But
Thank you.
for people listening, can you tell us a little bit about Samantha's Legacy and the things that you're doing and kind of the aims and purpose around it?
So the idea of Samantha's Legacy sort of came about, we're organising a fundraiser, and the money raised was going to go to a charity of Callum's Choice, which is Samantha's son. It would have been Samantha's 30th birthday, and so that's why we wanted to make it like, you know, a big night. And I think around that time, I remember there was a lot of knife incidences, and my mum, you know, when we see it on the news, it's really like heart wrenching for her, because we know how that family's feel, and we know everything that's gonna come for them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So we kind of just had a discussion about maybe doing some talks in schools. But one of the aims was, and it always, it's always right up there, and the work that we do is supporting the victims, changing things for victims. So the money that we raised over the years, we decided that would buy a little retreat. So we'll have a Samantha's retreat, we'll call it, and that's based like up in Morpeth, so it's still quite local. And we'll kind of work with the Violence Reduction Unit, the homicide team, and we get referrals through, and we send people there for short breaks. And I suppose the idea for us came from, our early days of wanting that feeling of to escape. Like my mum said earlier about, we had a lot of press at the door, so we wanted to be somewhere else. We just wanted to sort of escape the reality, sort of thing, and have them few days where we can just relax and just enjoy and smile, maybe. So that's what we wanted to be able to give to victims, and we know how important that is.
Especially around, like, birthdays, Christmas, memories.
Yeah.
Even the court, going to court, that it absolutely emotionally drains people. And so around that time, and it's not ever a one-off thing either. We're always, we keep in touch with everyone who goes and has a stay.
We'll have families that have been more than once as well, and we're very proud of it, aren't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're very proud of the retreat. I mean, I don't know, there's no other one in the Northeast. We are the only one that has something like that for victims to go to, and like then can just go, and they don't have to feel like they need to sit and talk to people. And I mean, I go up myself sometimes to just stay overnight and just sit there in silence, really, or read a book.
Just to escape,
very tranquil place. It's very quiet. It's lovely
and stuff. So purposely chose a quiet location. But yeah, that's going great. And we said we started off, should we just start telling Samantha's story? We could make a little bit of a difference. And then I think once we started, our first ever one was actually with a scout group.
Yeah, it was.
And it kind of just
flowed after that.
And then it was like, oh, will you come here and talk to these? And then it would, and then like we were saying earlier as well, it's what we feel like when something happens within the area, we'll kind of get like an outburst of emails and, you know, can you come here, can you come talk to these, and now we've kind of, so we do the education side, but we do, sometimes we work one-to-one. So for example, there was a young boy who was on the verge of getting expelled from school because he had taken a knife into school, and so I went in to see him, and I always remember, you know, I asked, why did you carry the knife? Why did you bring it into school? And his words were, I just wanted to fit in. And he
Oh,
thought
wow.
the knife would help him fit in within a peer group, but it was, you know, not to like judge on way people look or anything like that, but it was very, when I walked in the room and I seen him, he was a very quiet young boy, and it was so sad. Yeah, he was about 12, and it was
Oh,
so
wow.
sad. But one of the, you know, the recommendations of him to be able to stay in school was that he had that intervention with us. So we've done like a similar, and there was one boy within the youth justice service, and I remember I always added his comments to the presentation, and I said, "What made you pick that knife up?" And he said, "Anger. I was very angry," and I always remember thinking to myself, I must put that into our presentation. Anger take over.
I think one
Yeah.
of the main things that when we've done some first start Samantha's Leggy was bringing the knife angel to Gateshead.
Yeah, we saw that on your page. It was an incredible thing. I
Yeah.
saw the knife angel down here in Redcar,
Yeah,
and for me, I found it, and again, probably from a practitioner's point of view, someone who's been to a lot of knife crimes and violent crimes, I found it really overwhelming and really emotional.
yeah.
I was really moved by it, so I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like for you guys. But you were instrumental, weren't you, in getting it into Newcastle? And
Oh, that took a year for people to actually listen to her about that as well. That was hard work.
really,
And I just, the knockbacks that we got. And then Kim McGuinness stepped in as Police Crime Commissioner, and the support changed massively with Kim. She was on board straight away, wasn't she?
Yeah, and I think, you know, we ended up building this amazing team that
Yeah.
we just had we're bringing so many different things to the table, sort of thing, and it just kind of grew, and we had it for a month, but within the month it wasn't just, you know, the angel was there. We're seeing like thousands of young people, schools were invited to come down. Were HMS Calliope down like on the quayside. They helped out. We used their room, and we had kids just coming.
All the schools were amazing. Like,
Yeah,
they really showed a lot of interest.
Yeah.
But what happened from there was Colleen mainly had done a question and answer for the kids to fill in when they left. And they all had one in the seat every time. We must have seen thousands of kids from all loads of different schools. They were from like North Tyneside, South Tyneside, Durham. They came from everywhere. They were great. And we sat and told Samantha's story, and, you know, we do a bit like the statistics side of things and talk about, you know, gangs and why people carry knives. And it was great to hear that feedback, wasn't it? And a lot of the feedback were amazed how many kids were actually carrying knives, and it just gave them more determination to, we'll have to carry on with it.
Yeah.
how many kids were carrying knives? Can you remember?
Like the percentage. What was it again?
I would have to look at the notes, but it was, I would say, probably 15 to 20%. But like,
Wow.
it doesn't sound like very many. But like when you put the figures out there, you know, I will say that one knife that is being carried could have been that one victim, one more family
Exactly.
going through what we went through, and one more life lost.
What
Definitely.
was quite scary as well was, one of the questions was, do you know people that carry knives? And a lot of
That was
them,
very high.
I would say about 70% said yes.
Wow.
That's huge, isn't it?
Bear in mind, these were aged between 11 and 16.
Wow.
That's actually quite terrifying.
isn't
It
it?
is. Such a
Mhm.
young group as well.
Yeah, yeah. That was really wow, taken back. And what we loved was as well, they were so engaged, a lot of them weren't they? Were very respectful. I think that's how I found it quite shocking when actually some of the questions, you know, that they did carry knives, and the majority, I would say maybe all, 99% were so respectful, wanted to ask for loads of stuff, and they were engaged with it all. And
I think for us that was when we sort of realised that you know, telling Samantha's story was impactful,
oh
and
yeah, very.
we could be
Yeah.
changing things for people. And I remember at the time I didn't really think, you know, would we have much of an impact? Like, I don't
I
know.
didn't
And
think we
then,
would have had the interest that we did.
yeah, and now when I look back, I just think that it was like the penny drop, and we thought, like, we need to carry on doing this.
Yeah,
Need to
And
keep
I do
going.
believe that we have saved lives over
Yeah.
these years, and you
we
know,
have made a difference.
there's been young people who have been involved in, you know, not just knife crime, but different things. And the parents have even been in contact and said,
Yeah,
you don't realize how much of an impact you've had on my son or my daughter's life. And they've changed themselves around. We had one, I think we'd met them, the brothers, didn't we? The knife angel with the mother.
oh
The
yeah,
mother
yeah.
brought them because they were going down the wrong path. I think it
Yeah.
was just last year she got in contact, didn't
And
she?
seeing how well they were doing, how
Yeah.
it changed them just coming down to that meeting.
That must feel so
Wow.
good to you
Yeah.
guys.
It does.
It does, and it makes, like, you know, I always say sometimes it's really difficult to talk about Samantha. Like, we have our off days, and you know, there's been often I've broke down and I haven't been able to carry on, or same with me mum, and you know, but we've held each other up. But it kind of just gives, you know, all them comments that we're getting, people wanting to hear Samantha's story, and the recognition that we'll get as well now. And it's like it gives with that determination, and it just grows passion really
It does, yeah.
to make more of a difference. And we're just trying, you know, if anyone asks to be involved in something, we're that type of people who will just, yeah, we'll find the time, because we know
Yeah.
it'll make a difference.
Because I think people think, why do you do that? Is it not? It's not healthy for you. Why do you do it? I'll say, well, because we have to do it, and I'm determined to do it, because I feel like that's a message. We are Samantha's voice, and that is exactly what she would be wanting.
Yeah.
There has to be a purpose for that happening. That's the way I've looked at it. Is that right? Make something good out of something so evil. Yeah. It's one way to look at it, isn't it?
We do, yeah.
You are such incredible women, and it's
You
such
really are.
a testament to you guys and you as a family. What a lovely family, close family, that you find this strength to keep going and then doing so much good and raising awareness, because it is
Yeah.
so badly needed.
Yeah.
And the amount of lives that obviously you're touching, and like you say, you've, from just talking about Samantha's story and going into the schools and the education and engagement you're doing around it, has saved other lives, which must feel like give you a real sense of purpose and drive, I imagine.
Absolutely. It is, yeah.
It does, yeah. In the strangest way, it does, yeah.
Well, I think that's probably a really great place for us to wrap things up. Thank you both so much for coming on and sharing Samantha's story and your story. We do really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch and find out more about Samantha's legacy or to donate, where can they go?
So we do have a website, samanthaslegacy.com, also on TikTok, the gram, Facebook,
Yeah.
and email as well, info@samanthaslegacy.com. We're available on WhatsApp.
Fantastic. Well, we'll share them
Brilliant.
as well on our platforms.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you too so much.
Thank you to everyone for listening. We will see you in a fortnight's time for another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders, where we will take you back under the barrier tape.